say, our brochure lists a lot of other things that we do. And without the generous support and that fund drive, we wouldn't have the funds to be able to do that. Another thing I'd like to say is 100% of the money that comes into the organization goes back to the community. And so that's been a really a nice thing to be able to tell people. We can do that because we have a parent company, which is Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation. And they, under Tim Penny's leadership, and they provide all our accounting, tax, make sure we stay 501c3 and do everything right, handle all our money. They really, without them, we wouldn't exist. Just put it that way. They really help us out a lot. I guess I should mention our board members. We have a great board. They do a lot of hard work and give their time freely to provide a lot of the services that we provide. So I'm just going to mention Russ Meyer, Julie Lightman, Jada McMillan, Dr. Scott Duran, Rick Batley, John Trotter, and Bree Jusen. And we have 2 new board members coming on in July. Hasn't been announced yet, but so we'll have a couple of. So I just want to thank you for allowing me to come here, and thanks to the city. Has been very supportive of what we do, and the community has been overly generous. And like I say, we didn't exist without community support. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. And if you have any questions, I can take them. All right, anytime. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mann. We appreciate the update and look forward to seeing all those kids in the pool again this summer. Do we have any other public comment? If you'd like to make a comment, you can just step to the microphone and announce your name and residence. Any comment from the Zoom participants? I think we're good. All right. Hearing none, changes or additions to the agenda. I'd like to add something. Jeff had wondered about the need to continue the resolution 2020-10 where we establish the health pandemic emergency, and we will add that tonight. And did you place it on here? I can't remember what you decided to do. Is it on?
No.
Okay, so it will be added to general business number 9.9. You'd like to pull 9.5? 9.5 is discussion of forming a charter commission to oversee review and revision. So for a future date. Okay. All right. So seeing 9.5 removed and the addition of 9.9. Do we have any other changes or additions? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to keep my presentation very short. We have a long agenda, lots to discuss, but I really am so excited that the pool is going to be able to be open. I had a flashback to my childhood because they were blasting 80s music when they were getting things set up the other day when I came for an HPC meeting. There has been such an overwhelming support for that to resume. And of course, a lot of sadness that we won't have swimming lessons due to a lack of trained guards, but still just to have the pool open is just a marvelous thing. And it was great this holiday weekend to see so many people enjoying the parks and the beach and all of our amenities. And so we really appreciate Public Works for getting everything into shape for everyone's enjoyment this summer. The reading program begins at the library. I want to say the 7th. Would that be right? I should look that up. And so for kids who are interested in that program, that's a lot of fun and it goes fast. So if your kids are interested in reading, don't get them signed up late. It'll be over before you know it. I think it's the 7th. And I have no other really timely comments at this time, but I do want to give our new administrator. It's been wonderful working with Caroline. She's keeping me very busy, kind of getting back to speed on some of the projects that she's taken on. And so she has a brief report for us, even though she's given us a lot of updates via email. I just encourage her to feel free to have some time here too.
Yes, so I think there are definitely opportunities for grant funds, and that's where Tyler and I have been working together. We did submit the community development block grant funds for small business assistance last Wednesday, I think it was. Got it in the mail, and so it should have arrived. We did FedEx to make sure it got there. We've done a number of congressional requests, and now we are preparing a state bonding request for our Highway 60 project. And we also spoke with Representative Barb Haley about our barge terminal project. She's encouraged us to submit bonding requests for both the Highway 60 realignment project and the barge terminal project. And we understand from her that it might take a couple budget requests for this to get through, but the goal is to get on the tour of projects, so the tour of statewide projects. So I've been able to use prior grant requests and then just trying to make it sound compelling. So you'll see that later on the agenda today. I did restart conversations with MnDOT to talk about their cost share on the highway realignment project. And they're working on a cost estimate. And then I just got a meeting request. So I think they might be ready with what that looks like. And then there's the American Recovery Act, where we anticipate getting approximately $260,000, but we want to wait to present something till we have our final numbers. I thought of presenting something at this meeting, but then as Tyler pointed out, we really don't know the dollar amount. But we have learned, I have heard from a couple council members, when they looked at the list of eligible costs, which are different from the CARES Act, very different, to use the funds for sewer water projects. So we're looking at some estimates from that and some support for childcare businesses. And we have 3 years to expend the funds. And once the amount is finalized, Tyler and I will present kind of some draft ideas. And then we would like to have a plan for public comment and public participation. That was something also I heard from people. So if you have any other ideas, please email them. Otherwise, expect something coming. And then it's also on the agenda, but we're just going to be doing some long-term financial planning. And I'm trying to make sure I understand the goals that I've heard and your priorities that you mentioned and kind of capture that in that long-term plan. So, yep, that's all. It's been a good first month, I think, month and a half. I started in April. So it's been a learning curve, but it's been very good. So
I think you're managing the curve just fine. You might be setting the curve. Isn't that the kid that gets the extra bonus points on their chemistry test? Your comment about the tour reminded me too. We did have a really nice tour with the Army Corps, just as a follow-up. Did we do it before or after our joint meeting? When we had the special meeting of council and the Port Authority, it was the next day, I guess. We had a nice meeting. Jeff was able to tour. I went with, not Brian, looking around, Caroline, of course, as the new administrator and staff participants. So really helpful to see, a lot of the sites that are relevant to their management up close and in anticipation of public comment on the dredge material management plan. All right. Committee reports. I'm going to start to my left. What can you tell us from utilities?
Nothing. It's not till next
That's
Monday
right.
because
Jumps around.
the month just turned over. So I got nothing.
All right. From Port Authority, there's been action there.
Yeah, Port Authority met on Tuesday, the 18th of May. And we did a few things. One, we approved the small business COVID-19 program. So we'll participate in that if it does come to fruition. We approved funding the Port Infrastructure Development Program application. This is the federal application. So hopefully we'll see some results with that as well. I assume that'll go in by the end of June, I think is our deadline there. We appointed a subcommittee. One of the items that we had on our agenda was strategic and economic development plan for downtown, as well as an update for the visioning plan. And so what we got to was we got to a subcommittee to kind of review the visioning plan, and more to follow on the economic development plan as we go forward. Some of that kind of relates to the Second Street buildings. There's kind of one of those key driving factors of doing something about that. We accepted Mark Jarsted's resignation. Mark has been on the Port Authority for a number of years on various instrumental and some very big successful projects here in town. So I just want to thank him for his service. It was good to have him on the board. That's about it.
Very good. And from planning.
So we met on May 11th. We discussed the updates to the comp plan and kind of the process for that. More likely, we'll have a few updates this month on the 15th, just to kind of get some of the Eagle Center, the Highway 60 project, and the barge terminal, some wording in there, partly to get funding and request applications and stuff. So we'll update that minimally, I guess, but there's still a public hearing for that. And then we'll work on updating each section and kind of, some of it will be probably postponed till next year so we can budget that component, but we'll go from there. So our next meeting is on the 15th of June, so it's not the year.
Okay.
So,
And I stepped off the Heritage Preservation Commission when I first became mayor, but I'm back on, so I should get with the program and do a commission update there too. That group saw the application for the sort of the facade, sort of minimal facade changes that will occur on the National Eagle Center's Main Street properties as they prepare the inside for this early renovation. So essentially it's unifying awnings for that property, unifying windows with color, essentially with paint. So the first changes that will be evident will be small, but they'll still be important with regards to wayfinding, that kind of thing. And I don't think we had any other business, but the heritage preservation, the historic tax credit, which Minnesota enjoys, is 20% of the qualifying rehabilitation costs of a qualifying project. And that matches the federal, and our tax credit program was set to sunset this year. And I think it still remains to be seen what will come of that, but we did some advocacy. Linda Mann is the chair of the commission. She did a letter and to our legislators that are involved in advocating for that tax credit. And from parks, Tony.
We did not have a meeting for streets or parks, so there's no updates there.
Okay, sounds good. And I think that's everybody. Yeah. I would welcome other staff report, not to put you on the spot, but if you want to share anything from EMS, feel free. It's been busy. Yeah, too busy. Thanks for being out there all the time at all hours. All right, so with no further reports, we have our consent agenda. We have the Board of Appeal and Equalization minutes from 4/22. We have the May 4th City Council meeting minutes. Liquor license renewals are the St. Felix gambling license, St. Felix's temporary liquor license, the June warrants, Matt Wabi and Austin Little's pool certification exam wage adjustment, Urban Arrows gambling premise approval, the May 18th special council minutes from our combined meeting, and a request for donation to the fireworks display, and the Wabasha County Fair's temporary liquor license. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move.
Second.
We have a motion from Tim. We have a second from John. Any further discussion? We get to vote without a roll, at least for this one. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion prevails. Fantastic. That's fun. This is going to get our minutes down. I mean, get our time down considerably, right? All right. So under general business, we have before us a resolution 18/2021 approving the application for capital budget funding for the Highway 60 realignment, which Caroline foreshadowed. And additionally, the capital budget request designs. Do you want to give us any additional information?
Just that, this is one of the requirements of the application and it's due in late June. And I'm just kind of, getting caught up to where we're at. But I just read the grants that had been written, read the grant that you did and try to capture it in the project proposal. I can definitely send out the draft when it's ready, but I think this will capture it. So we just try to, in the resolution, kind of take what the state's priorities are and just show how it meets a lot of the priorities that are there. And I think it's a great project because number one, addresses life and safety issues. We've talked a lot about how the highway's current route is, a safety concern, and we have a lot of grant language on this, preserves an existing infrastructure and repairs existing facilities. While some of this is new, I think, talking with Tony, the athletic field definitely needs to have repairs. I guess we're building new technically, but I think it's a creative reuse of existing land in the city. And then we'll be talking about that 50% match in the long-term financial budgeting. It has had a lot of community engagement. we need that local resolution. There's a goal around climate preparedness or clean energy. And I think this project talks about restoring the slough, which is great. And then we just talk about, the safety of benefits the local school and the people that walk around there. So I try to capture that here in the resolution, and I'm hoping for your support to apply for these funds as it was just kind of, as I understand it, a high priority. And I heard it from the council members, and I think in my interview process. So this is the first step, and hopefully we'll get on the tour. And then we would be applying for essentially 50% of the project cost is something out of the bat. And then we might get cut from there. So,
Question,
yeah.
project costs, do we
Yeah.
have any idea what the total project?
I'm looking about, if you do the whole thing, I'm looking about 8 to 10 million for the whole thing. But I think our hope is to not, to try to go after numerous sources. So help from the DOT for the project, maybe some county participation, and then potentially, I think the housing could come in a phase 2. So we could also break up the project a little bit in a phase 1 and a phase 2, like the Eagle Center did. But the highway, we're estimating the new athletic field to be about 1.9 million and the highway reroute to be about 3 million. So, yeah.
All right. So we have before us this resolution. Any other questions? We can also have questions and discussion. Do we have a motion to put forth this resolution?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
We have a first from Jeff. We have a second from Brian. Any further discussion? Thank you, Caroline, for jumping on this. Thanks to everybody for participating all along through this Greater Minnesota Futures process. And of course, everybody who involved himself in the comp plan. This is what these planning tools are supposed to do for us, is position us well for this. So while we may have to wait, as Barb Haley educated us, and it's not surprising, we certainly won't get there if we don't apply. All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Tyler and Caroline. We look forward to drafts or whatever you end up sharing with us.
Yep.
All right, now we have a resolution 17/2021 approving delegation of authority for paying claims presented to the city of Wabasha. And you probably think we got an update about this in our administrator's update by email, but we're looking at allowing the city staff to pay invoices in a more timely fashion, more than once a month. So this, if it's approved, that'll allow them to save time and money, I guess is the gist of it. Anything else? Yeah, you spelled it out very clearly for everybody.
Yeah, and Tyler helped also with getting this off the ground, and very wisely did share this with our attorney and our auditor, and they said that it's very common for communities to do that to allow more timely payment of bills. And so what this does mean is you're still going to see a copy of all the paid claims as you always do. I would not be approving any claims that would put us over a line item budget, because that would be against the charter. But it is allowed under state statute for, I can get our bills paid essentially weekly, or however long we decide, and then we will still share those paid claims. And if you have any concerns about something I approved where it was unbudgeted for or whatever, you can still bring those up and we can address those. But it would allow us to not wait until the council meeting to physically pay an invoice. And then when we're discussing with staff, they just shared that there have been times that we've gotten late fees because we couldn't get that bill paid on time, or we weren't able to take advantage of discounts offered for early payment. So it just seemed, something kind of that I learned about from staff, and it seemed kind of something that would make sense for city council, and you would still have the control over reviewing those claims. So
good.
So you would be the responsible party then?
I would be the responsible party, yes. Tyler, do you want to add anything?
No, just that the auditor and the city attorney both reviewed it, they said it was very common and it was a legitimate resolution to make. Also just save time at the end of the month, we're not putting all the bills together at the same time, we can spread that work out every week or every 2 weeks, that'll help staff time as well, so. I think the questions.
Very good. Any questions? Otherwise, we would entertain a motion.
I think the mayor, you're still signing all the checks, so gives us oversight, direct oversight still essentially on the council. That way too.
Yeah,
That
and
doesn't change.
nothing changes except the timeliness of it, right? All right, did I hear a motion? Craig, we have a motion from Craig. Do we have a second? Thank you, John. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thanks for looking into that. Sometimes it's simple stuff that just can be improved. All right, we have also the transfer building discussion. We've gotten information from Tony, very thorough examination of the maintenance issues. Tony, do you want to say anything about what you learned?
Not too much. I think everybody has seen the attached documents from Schwickert's. I still have not heard from Tim Carl's. But I think this roof repair quote, I mean, it's a very detailed, kind of explains, exactly what they're fixing and what they saw. So Caroline and I were talking, if we did want to go forward with this tonight, I could still wait, we could possibly approve this price and I could still get with Tim Carl's and see if I can get that, see if this is lower before authorizing repairs, but that's about the only thing we can do at this point.
If we approve this, I would go lower.
Well, because he's a local contractor.
Yeah, but he's already thinking we're willing to pay $6,000.
Well, he hasn't seen it yet, but we talked about that and it was like, well, let's bring it before the board and see what to do. So, and in the meantime, it's leaking and there's stuff in there. So, I mean, but if you choose tonight, we can approve them to fix it and be done with it too. It's totally up to.
I think we should move ahead with this and just get it out of the way. 6,000 seems like a reasonable price for that fix. Versus with what we were facing, it's 30,000 and then another 30 for this idea. So I just think, let's do this, get it out of the way, get it done. There's a nice detailed statement of work, so I think we've got it. I'm in favor.
Do you want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
And we should talk about where the money is coming from.
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, so yes, let's see, I forgot about that detail. Just that it's not in CIP. Is that what?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
nothing, it's not planned anywhere, so it's either put it in the CIP and take it out of there or general fund or public works budget, but I don't really know
We'll
if I
have
would take it out of mine.
Yeah.
What is the chamber company with paying rent on? How much?
We talked about that about 2 meetings ago. Well,
Yeah,
600. 600
month, year,
month.
month.
Oh, for the energy bill. Oh, we don't pay rent. We don't,
Steve Benning pays rent to the city for his use of the storing of his antiques.
we don't pay rent. We pay the electric bill.
My question is, why are we spend $6,000 when rent is, yeah, why not have to rent?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we can maybe tackle that later. Should we be charging rent for this? But I think right now we're looking at a leaking roof. With we have some liability that, in a way that we're not fixing the roof. And there's
Use.
property inside.
Well, my concern is that we spend $6,000 now, and then next year, we end up spending another $6,000. And next year, another $6,000. When do we stop?
What?
First 6,000.
Well,
I see it as our building. I see it as our building that we should expect to have maintenance costs on. I think it's uncertain use for long-term has maybe diminished the need to plan for that. But I think that's, as Craig pointed out, sort of a separate issue, but I don't see how we don't repair the building that we know needs damage or that we know needs repair. Those are important questions to ask, but I think we got to give Tony direction.
I don't understand why we're trying to build it. Probably eventually will be torn down. But that's just it, probably eventually. Well, we know it will, somebody will buy that property at some point. Right, but when is
How
that?
much money have we put in that bill since we purchased it?
I don't think we put any in it.
I think we put it on.
I don't know.
The chamber group has made repairs too, on behalf of their own, you know. I don't, we have done not very much to it, because we didn't expect it to still be in use today. So that's why we never talked about it, worried about it, and you know, if I would have known that we would have it open for 10+ years yet, you know, we probably could have done.
I think some other better direction from council, are we gonna have it there for another 10 years, so Tony knows what to do? Or are we just gonna?
We mentioned 5 years in previous discussions. And so what we need to do before the 5 years is up is find a new home for the food shelf.
And the developer comes in next month.
Well, that'd be really, really wonderful. We'll make that decision then.
Yeah.
And the process of that development will still take a year plus
Yeah.
anyway, so we'll have to, you know, that's a good problem to have. I don't foresee it.
And I think too, you know, one of the things that we've been talking about, and Caroline brought it to the Port Authority as well, the whole process of understanding what the strategic moves should be in that property. Should it be residential? Should it be commercial on the first floor or should it be an event center for the chamber? The chamber brings a lot of people into town.
Well, I have no doubt, I support the super one. But I have no doubt about that, I support the super one.
Yeah,
So
so
at some point you have to state enough, no,
I don't think we're there.
I do.
So,
And how much longer are we gonna keep letting a city asset being used for nothing? You know, I mean, why do we get free rent for a city asset?
And that's a good discussion, you know. The Grandpa's Barn brings in a lot of customers to their business and customers spread out over the city, so there's some benefit there, but should they be paying rent? That's a good question, but I don't think we need to answer that tonight. I think we need to repair the building because it's leaking. And I think we need to do that. Right now, we have, it looks like a good price, reasonable. It's city property.
We've had months to think about it.
Years.
Right. So I heard a motion, but you asked the question where, and so I suppose that should be part of the motion.
It's another added cost taken out of the CIP.
Right.
That's all, but I mean, that's the only place that I can see it, taken at this point. So.
So would your motion include that?
Yeah.
So we have a motion to pay for these repairs through the CIP. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Brian. All is in favor? Opposed, same. Oh, sure. I'm sorry, Dean, go ahead.
So we're gonna approve this, with no direction from Tony. So we fix these repairs, we get a hailstone from, or we'll pipe it in through. Are we gonna tell Tony to throw more money into it? At his discretion?
I think.
We got insurance, don't
Right.
yeah, we got insurance on the building.
What did the damage was last one? Did we make an insurance claim?
No, you mean for what led up to this?
Yeah.
It's just old age. I mean, we're putting some Band-Aids on it to keep it together. I mean, if it came down to insurance, I'm sure it'd be an argument. They'd come and look at it and probably, well, you know, 60 years old, your roof is shot already, but, it's a tough situation. And I believe that what their scope of work is, it's gonna get us down the road a few years at least. Just so you guys can make a decision, you know, because if probably getting into this too much, but if what they do keeps Oktoberfest going, that's big for Wabasha, so until we find a spot for them,
It's a big conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And I understand that, I fully support the door request, but once again, a year from now, we have a developer, it should be nice. We're not actively making a development, find an alternative by keeping this going on.
So if that happens, we will put about $6,000 in over the last whatever many years to allow for the revenue that's been generated to support our town's 1 month festival. I mean, it's a proposition I think most communities would really be lucky to have, have an event that's able to fund such a significant
I agree with that.
celebration. So I'd like to have that conversation with them, with the chamber in a very kind of workshop oriented, strategic way versus sort of having them, needing them to appear at a council meeting to sort of defend themselves. I think we want to have that.
Every year we fight over $50,000.
Yeah, I know.
For magazines and stuff, and now we're spending even more money. And yes, they bring in a lot of money, I have no doubt about that, but, I guess you got 5 years to look.
Well, maybe this fall during budget time or January 1st of 2022, there's an agreement in place where we get so much a month. And that helps offset the $6,000.
So from what I understand, you can't afford it. In addition, we're paying $600 right now for the storefront. I think the city should be looking at, selling that little personal property down there that we just tore the building down on, and selling it to them for, set up a nice building for them, and, let them, assist them in whatever manner they need. But, I just see us rolling forward continuously on this, and, no real answers. So,
I don't disagree with you, Dean, and I think those are good ideas. I just think that it would be nice for us to have a plan in place before we
plan is
make
not
those
gonna get in
decisions.
place if we continue doing what we're doing. So,
Well, I
There-
think that
there was a plan.
process has begun.
There was a plan 15 years ago for that whole area that we developed.
I know,
Yeah,
but
it went
that the
nowhere.
developer pulled out, didn't they?
No, this is for the convention center, and, this is the Karen Cleese, chamber and all that stuff. And, there's money being raised and so forth, and it just died out. So, if they would have continued with that, they would have money right now, and they would have a nice facility going. But,
Well, I think that they came to realize that probably that wasn't a good idea in space at that time. And that kind of led back into, was that 15 years ago? I think that was a little ago.
No, that was
No.
recent, yeah.
well, I was back on 6 years and I'll be part of that.
But anyway, I don't disagree with you, and I think we really do need to have a plan, so when we're all gone, that plan, so it's just like having a comprehensive plan, or a subdivision plan, we need to have some kind of a roadmap, and we don't have that yet. So just to not do anything. is-
I'll bring it up every month for the next year and a half, to get a plan going. So,
Well, we'll have that strategic conversation. It's a good time. We're revisiting our comp plan. Main Street organization is doing their transformational strategies. And it's all that needs to be discussed. There's so many stakeholders. The chamber isn't the only stakeholder involved in this. So we had a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign.
hey,
Motion carries. All right. Thanks, Tony, for that extra information for us. Yeah. All right, fire hall edition. So we got a summary related to this also in Caroline's written administrative report. Maybe Darren, you want to speak to this a little bit? We've got good information, but it'd be good to hear from you.
I can do that briefly, I guess. I mean, I spoke with quite a few of the council members and discussed a little bit of what we're looking at down there, since we're talking about leaky buildings and remodel and stuff. But we've been talking about this for quite a few years, and we decided that this was maybe a time just to see what the cost factor would be in remodeling what we currently have. Putting up a new building and combining with the ambulance and putting up a whole building is a big project to put forth with to a city that has a lot on the plate already. So what we're looking at here is going through and doing this is basically a renovation of there and adding on to the back of the fire hall to basically supply all the equipment that we have. Right now, we're filling up the city shop with, fire department equipment, and, we need to look at some ways of, expanding down there. And we got a group together, some contractors, electricians, stuff, and kind of sat down and brainstormed a little bit and to see what would be best, and, the best route to go without being real high expense to do something with it. So what I'm asking for tonight, is to just be able to go out and get a higher architect to briefly go through and look at that project and then give us a rough cost factor on what it's gonna be to do what we wanna do. We're not looking at something big, we're just looking at adding a 45-foot addition off the back of the building, the length of the building. And what that would do is, I think you all have copies of the rough drawing there, and it would give us basically a chance to put in a bigger training room, meeting room, et cetera, where we can control heat. We gotta look at the ventilation system down there, it's outdated. So there's just some things we gotta do, and I think this is getting a quote from an architect would be the first step we can go to, just to see if this is feasible. If it's not, I guess that's what I'm looking at tonight. So.
Thanks for that. Yeah, and for everybody who was involved in kind of, figuring out your programmatic needs. So we could entertain a motion to allow Tony to obtain quotes for the specifications that Darren just described. What that means is that we are not thinking about future combined EMS fire building, which, I sort of wondered about that with regards to the Highway 60 reroute. I was a part of a presentation at a conference where they talked about the city kind of putting it's taking a step forward to initiate development in a parcel similar to what we're looking at. But if you have a facility that simply needs an addition, that makes sense. I mean, your needs.
Yeah, we check out some possibilities, and I don't foresee sticking $3 million into a building that we can do for a fourth of the cost because the structure is perfectly fine. We just need to resheet it and insulate it and put the addition on the back, and I think we'd be good for another 35, 40 years.
Right.
And I think that's, the best route for Wabasha. So.
Very good.
You have a ballpark figure what it might cost?
I don't really, to be honest with you. We, about 8 years ago, no, not 8 years, 4 or 5 years ago, we had Tim Carl's come in, just sit down with a couple of the meetings that we talked about there, and the cost at that time was about $475,000. So we did, after doing some surveys or doing some checking with which way the sewer ran, so we had to know if we had to run all the way out to the highway. After checking into some of the stuff that we didn't check in before, we actually, it's a little bit easier than what we thought. So but with the cost of construction material, we do know that steel has not gone up a whole lot. So to resheet that would be not so bad. And, we got some pretty handy guys in our department too. So I think we can, once we come back with a cost factor, it opens up a whole different discussion.
Mhm.
So I just want to find out where we're at, and even if it doesn't happen, at least in the future, we know that we tried this or we looked into this, because I really think it's something that we can make happen. But
Besides the fire station, are we not having a problem with the ambulance burn down there?
No, we're gonna bring that up.
As far as accessibility and as far as living conditions, one bedroom or whatever, would it not be the time, or what the time be now to look at that, combine it, the two buildings, and utilizing the training area? I don't.
yeah, we went into that. That was kind of the first step process to this remodel program or remodel deal, was to add the ambulance into that remodel plan. And we drew up specs to kind of add that along with it. And there was just some
some timeframes that they wanted to hold off on to a couple more years to see before they did some with the ambulance garage as
And if we
well.
do something down there to update the HVAC, are we going to, make it to where we can actually tie in to a new ambulance barn or something?
Yeah, the way we got it laid out to do the addition, we got it laid out so where if the, say 2 or 3 years or 4 years that the ambulance decide to do an addition on their facility, we have it set up to where we can connect the two together fairly easy. And then we have one entrance, one main entrance going in, and we go right to the ambulance or left to the fire. And, that would really, you know, to me, that makes a lot of sense. And then you have it all in one big structure.
No, it's my own question, whether we're looking outward, which sounds like we are.
Well, and I think it really comes down to what the assessment is. I mean, if the quote is 200,000, yeah, we might just leave it there. It comes back at 800,000. Well, I think it's a completely different discussion. Do you now combine it with the ambulance and make it 1.5 million? Or do we build a completely new building? To me, it's what it comes down to, because I can tell you the ambulance barn, I bet it needs $300,000 easily. To get rooms, to get storage, to get meeting places and stuff, you know, and or can we utilize the whole spaces for everybody's needs? I mean, that's a discussion we'll have to have.
It sounds like you guys maybe expect that.
Well, I mean, yeah, to a point, but I think we would on the ambulance, we probably want to make some different changes than what was discussed on the fire department. So to meet the ambulance needs. So I think it just comes down to that. I'm all in favor of remodeling it, but if it's gonna cost $750,000, I would really question, should we do it now and do both, or potentially look at building a new building in 2 years? I mean, it opens the possibilities up of what we could potentially do. Well, I mean, I like the location, I think it's nice, but I also just don't wanna, you know, say we're getting a quote and we're guaranteeing we're not moving. That I don't think should be that should still be on the board. I mean,
Sure.
And what I don't wanna see is, all right, we're gonna move ahead and see about checking and build a new building and I'm fairly familiar with another community just around here that, you know, put in for $1.2 million, you know, fire EMS building. And, the cost came in after the build was all done, it skyrocketed another $300,000-400,000. The citizens of that town could have run the chief right out of town. And, I don't wanna see something like that happen. I just think that we can.
Would it be worthwhile to have your architect, the architect, look at that possibility so it can set up, okay, if we just do the fire barn, or if we do the fire barn and the ambulance, we have some choices.
And I actually talked to Kim a little bit today about that, and, we do have the prints drawn up for both. We do. So we actually started out with that original plan, and then we just chopped that part off. But I had mentioned that to Tim today when I was talking to him, that we could possibly have this architect give a ballpark figure too on the addition to the ambulance at the same time, so we have a total amount roughly on what we can do. And we can make something like that happen, I believe, without I think have our architect come in and give this. I think, Tony, you said that when they came up into the city shop, it was about $8,000 for them coming and do that. 8 to 10. I'm hoping we stay right around that same ballpark area. So
Darren, there's some like immediately pressing issues with the building, right?
Yeah.
You got some corrosion and stuff in the base of the building, the skin.
yeah, we'll start.
Skin,
Yeah,
that kind of stuff, and there's some other issues, HVAC maybe, or exhaust.
exhaust part of
That
it
kind of
too.
stuff. And I get that, right?
Yeah.
And you know my position on this, like I'll share it. I've always had this vision of it maybe going across the street and utilizing those properties as for more commercial development. And we're closer now than we've ever been before with maybe getting that, the old fairgrounds, whatever you want to call it, to the next step. And if we can move it across there and leverage some of that whole activity, then do we create a safer environment for everybody? And one of the things I'm always concerned about is that as we arrive for fire or EMS calls, we're actually crossing in front of vehicles that are trying to leave. And so there's a bunch of different angles and situations that are kind of worrisome about where those buildings are currently positioned. And that they wasn't an issue before, it's becoming more of an issue now. I don't have a problem. I think it's a good idea to try to figure out how you can sustain in that building, because it's not going to happen overnight. The R6061 project is just not going to happen vote, right? But I will tell you this, it's closer now, and I think there's a number of people on the council here that can agree with that, than it's ever been before. And I don't want to see that as a lost opportunity. There's been a lot of work that's been done on that side of the highway, for that side of the street, for future commercial development already. And that's, I just vision that more as that kind of path of progress for that stuff. And I think that concept of combining stuff, then, like we talked about, maybe better sleeping quarters, combined meeting quarters, so you get better use out of all of that space. Maybe it becomes something more of a public meeting space if we need to do larger meetings and that kind of thing. So I think it's a good idea to do something new, something different, or whatever with this one. I just don't want it to be the end. That's my thing.
I mean, I would be fine with, if there was oh, yeah, let's do this in a couple of years thing, and there's a possibility of something like this, but I think,
But you got some things that gotta be done now.
I do.
And with that, asking question, what's the biggest priority right now? The HVAC?
I would say that's probably part of it. The ventilation system inside the station is so old school that I think that's something we gotta look into, regardless of whether the station gets remodeled or not. I think that's gotta happen. We got some patching of the foundation or the framework around the outside, we're getting beehives in the hall.
Yeah.
So there's just things we gotta do that, and if the city guys went up there to do some work this winter for, the gutters and stuff, it's not even safe to go back up there. So we definitely need to look at some options, and I think I just don't wanna see
Don't you have a program that we talked about last month, where restaurants can, for HVAC and businesses and stuff, Kansas City, people like that, I don't know.
Sorry.
CARES would have been, I think
CARES would have been
CARES
eligible
would have
under
been.
CARES,
Yeah.
but not even under, as I understand the new regulations.
we did submit the HVAC under the CARES Act, and I think it's accepted. So we did try to run.
Well, I agree with John. I think it's just a touch point of what we have to look at, because I'm not totally sure if we considered all the changes that the ambulance barn needs done. I mean, because there's parameters. I mean, I would love to put bigger doors in. I mean, there's like a half an inch or a quarter of an inch clearance to get, and it makes, and I don't think it's safe anymore. And then there's OSHA standards of all you have to have, you have to walk all the way around the ambulances and stuff like that. We don't have that today either. So I just want to make sure that when we look at this and we look at the grand picture of it, we're going to keep it that great. But I'm just telling you, there's a lot of changes in the ambulance that need to be happening because of standards change, new laws and stuff like that. So I want to make sure we're also capturing that in bids as well. So, I mean, I'm all for just looking at it and see what it's going to cost and what's the next steps. Because I don't know if it needs to be done tomorrow, but it needs to be done sooner than later, apparently.
So, we potentially are gonna spend $8,000 on architectural. Is that $8,000 used for HVAC? Does that please go close to it?
No, the HVAC system would be about 30 grand that we need to put into that building, but it's something we're dealing with the old ventilation system right now, and we're working with it. We're making it happen, and so it's just that the ventilation system we got put in there is 18 years old. We got on a grant, and there's one system out there, and that's it. There's no going out and get replacement parts and stuff unless you buy strictly from this company, and they just have it. So you fork out a lot of money for small pieces. And it just, to me, we're putting more and more, but, I would like that to be part of the renovation project.
I would agree with John. It would be nice to, go with something in that other area. The question I have for that is, if let's say we were to do that, can we bond that? Help bond on that?
Yeah.
We can. Okay. Wasn't sure if we could or not.
And I don't even know enough to comment like this, but I wondered if it would make for a more compelling application or not. I mean, that is public safety element.
Are we looking at 4 or 5 years for Highway 60 reroute? I mean,
I have no idea.
I haven't heard either, I guess.
I'm thinking, in Minda, it used to be 4 years to get the project
Matt,
going and
yeah.
so.
So,
It's kind of where the money lies, it can speed it up.
so Darren, we're stuck with, could be 4 years out. What do you think you could live with?
Well, I mean, we could make it work if I knew in 4 years that was gonna happen.
Right.
I
That's your problem.
have been in the city long enough to know that
Right.
these things don't
Click along the
very
way you'd
often
like them
happen,
to.
and
Right.
I just don't wanna be, we got, our calls right now are double from what we had for last year, even which were double last year, so we are running,
Doubled it.
we're running two calls a day a lot of times, and this weekend, we've been on the water 3 times, it's like, we've got all this equipment that just has no place to go, we're spread it all over the place, and
So
I'm just looking for some answers to the future.
we would have a better idea of the city 2 years out, so, on the highway work project.
Yeah, I think that it's gonna, we'll know more and more as time goes by.
But if
So,
you have a failed bonding request, that doesn't really teach you much about the future, it's just time, just adds time, you just, yeah, I mean,
so I'm just wondering if we can get by for 2 years.
Well, I think
That's really for me to ask, but
No, that's a perfectly legit question. I just think we need to, just to see what the cost factor is of this, to get the renovation done, if that's possible. And if I guess then when that cost comes back, kind of see where we're at with, with that part of it.
it will give you information with which, will give us all information with which to make future
It would,
decisions.
yeah, we'll regroup us up and make another decision, it's basically what, once we got a cost factor, whatever.
But comparing, your 2 scenarios, the fire having its addition only, or fire having some combined, assets that are shared with EMS, that's a totally separate issue from a totally new combined building on a different parcel with different site considerations. So we won't get that information from this work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually when we've talked about this in the past, we talk about the fire hall, and the ambulance gets added, and city hall gets added, and then it never happens.
Right.
So that's kind of why we're like, okay, we've been through this a few times, let's focus just on the fire hall and see where that goes, because like you said, we don't know
Your needs are pressing.
what Ed needs, or city hall needs or anything like that, but we're not looking at spending any money on what this next step is. Basically, I want to contact our city engineer and then Warnke Associates out of Winona that did Public Works building, and kind of give them a list of parameters, maybe have them come up and look at it and say, what's it going to cost for an architectural design? And just kind of go that, and we'll bring that back. We're not looking at spending any money this round.
Sure.
But at the next meeting, we know a little bit more. So, maybe tonight, do we come up with, do we do 2? Do we do a combined cost and a single cost for the fire department and come back at the next meeting and talk about it again? It's an option.
That would be the way I would like it, and I would just make sure that we work with Ed and the ambulance to make sure there's things that we haven't thought of yet either. But I don't wanna all of a sudden we combine them, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we gotta put another 200,000 in the ambulance building and completely forgot. I don't wanna go down that path, so I think the next step would be, let's see what we get back for some quotes, and then, if it's a combined 1.5 million project, does it make more sense to move it and build a brand new building to everybody's needs and specs, or is it safer to keep it right where it's at and put 1.5 in, or whatever it comes out to? I without numbers, I guess we're just guessing.
Yes.
I think my personal preference would probably keep it where it's at, but we also don't want to take away parking that's currently there. We want to make sure we can shift it out that far, 40 some feet or whatever as well. And everybody's needs are met. So I want to make sure that we're kind of all thinking on the same page before we say, yeah, let's go ahead and revamp the whole thing. But I do agree not to wait on this. I mean, it's either we decided it's going to be done in 2 years and we'll figure out the financing part of it, or we're putting it in the comp plan and saying, all right, it's part of the Highway 60 project. We have to make a decision. We just can't hit it on.
Well,
Well, to me, it sounds like it's we need to do some work on the capital improvement plan and update that, and we're gonna do that.
Which is
Soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
couple of weeks, so yeah.
I'm thinking-
This is good
That's why
time.
it's a good compliment.
And some of these numbers may be helpful in doing that.
Yeah.
So
So
I don't know how quickly they can,
We did put a
Respond.
placeholder in the Mike Wabasha's plan.
Yeah.
So I mean, that'll come out, it shows over years what it would cost, you know, and I think it's 2 or 4 years from now.
Yeah, what I put in my notes is, I mean, just to be frank, but new construction will cost a lot, and so I think that we can do no increase with just rehabbing it, but I think we even to do new construct and do all of our priorities and no tax increase.
Yeah.
I think you either have to push it out to 6 to 8 years, or again, look at, is it $25 a year? And those numbers we could look at, but I just don't want anyone to think to themselves, we can do it all and not have a impact on taxes, because even going for the bonding, we've got to do that 50% match, and, so, and you all probably knew that, but I just wanted to say that.
And we talked about that too,
Yeah.
If this comes back at $700,000, why are we gonna put that much money in a building that's worth 200,000? I mean, we know, but we gotta start somewhere and get some numbers, so that's kind of.
So what do you need from us?
Just basically, we're not gonna spend any money, just approval for Darren and I to work with, try to get, a couple different prices on some architectural engineering design and bring that back for consideration at the next meeting.
very good.
Yeah, I think we gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
And we're saying 2 designs, one just for the fire hall and then one for fire hall and ambulance.
I mean, I agree, I think it seems like a good approach.
It's kind of like a feasibility study.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Is it worth money or is it?
Right. Yeah.
Blind.
Some shades down. All right, do we have a motion? Thank you. This is really helpful and good. Thanks, Dean.
I'll
Do you have a
second.
second? Tim, thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you both. And thanks all for the written information ahead of time. I appreciate that. Oops. Back. All right, we have a discussion on forming a charter commission that's been removed. That'll go to a future agenda. Approval of full-time ambulance hire. Ed, did you want to share anything about this? We have interviews have been conducted by Ed and with the assistance of our clerk, Wendy Bush, and ambulance crew member Cindy Shealy. And we have a conditional offer.
Good evening.
Hello.
We are actually came up with an offer for Stephen Eiler. He is currently serving as a Army Reserve Military Police. He's currently completed his medic license through the Army and is wanting to join us full time. So he'll be still in the Army Reserve and doing his duties there, plus working for us full time. If you'll approve that, we'll let him know tonight, and he actually said he would be able to start tomorrow.
And this is replacing the also position.
Yep, this is a replacement, not a addition.
I move.
Thank you, Tim. Second, Jeff. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to Wendy and Cindy too, helping with those interviews. All right, and we have an adopted revised, or we have the opportunity to adopt a revised COVID-19 preparedness plan, which Carolyn outlined.
Yep, so we reached out to the county health department and they said that they suggest that we maintain policies for ongoing social distancing and staying home if you are sick. And I can even, oh no, I'm just saying, I think it's important because I know it's tempting for staff to come in when they're sick. That's why I think it's good to reemphasize this policy. And then cleaning. So as you can see with the track changes, it's pretty much, we're keeping the COVID-19 preparedness plan in place. I would administer it. I had Lisa Springer as the administrator, but just because this is, HR and things, it feels like that I can continue to do that. We'll still, clean as we always do. And we did, it is required through the League of Minnesota's that we use the language that the state did in the executive plan, which is that all employees of the city of Wabasha are strongly encouraged to be vaccinated. And if you are not vaccinated, you are strongly encouraged to wear a mask. And then, you know, just again, if you think you got COVID, we still want people reporting that because there could be some people who are not vaccinated. And, you know, we kind of kept a lot of things, the social distancing there. But you know, what's mainly changed is the mask wearing requirements. And then I just updated the executive plans in here. So, and then, you know, I think we can continue to revise it as we hear from the health department. You know what, it's not necessary to keep the social distancing policies in place or the cleaning or staying sick at home when you're sick. I think that's going to change because I think as we can work remotely, then, you know, we don't feel as guilty about, you know.
So
Very good.
This document that was handed out tonight,
Oh,
This will be
that's the
separate.
that's in 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But is that gonna replace, is this going to replace this?
So no, that's our policy. The one you're holding up right now, Craig, is the policy for employees, and I guess and for the conduct of business in the city. This was our resolution that established the health emergency, which gave the city employees some opportunities to do things without us meeting in person, which of course we can do now. So this is just a revision to the policy that every employer has to have in place.
I'm not looking at it.
Just today, just at the beginning, top of the meeting.
So are we complying with this thing?
This, with the resolution, our resolution,
Yeah.
we're gonna cancel it.
We want to rescind.
We want to rescind it at this time.
This is gonna go away.
This is gonna go away, yes.
This is saying at least one member of city council or city attorney shall be physically present at the meeting.
Right.
location.
That was during our Zoom, so Tyler and staff or Jess and Wendy were always here. So, sorry,
What we're talking about, or
so we're talking about the COVID-19 plan for the city of Wabasha, which is
It's
basically,
the operating plan.
yeah, and it's essentially it's HR. It's making sure that we're safeguarding our employees against COVID.
but I just heard something going on.
The resolution that established the public health emergency that when we were needing to meet remotely, yeah, it was from 2020, when we had to
And
meet.
that's in addition to the agenda.
Mhm.
And what's this one?
That's the one that we're gonna rescind, yeah.
9/9.
So we're
Put that off to the side.
It's coming up. It's coming up. So all we have to do right now is we can entertain a motion to approve this adopted.
I'll take a motion. to approve.
Thank you, Tim.
Second.
Jeff, go ahead. We'll have Jeff in the record as the second. Any further discussion?
I'm totally confused. What?
Um,
I would have liked to have known about this. How?
well, it was added at the top of the hour and it's gonna be discussed in a minute and we'll make sure you know what it is. So the policy, updated policy, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, now, sorry, it's not this next item, it's the following item. So you may remember from Caroline's interview process and our negotiations on her contract, that she would have remote work for a period of time and also a review at some point here. Her remote work, believe it or not, is going to be coming up for renegotiation as of July 4th. So we would like to have a ad hoc personnel committee convene to discuss the logistics of extending that remote piece. I'd like to have a larger conversation later about remote work in general. I think the whole world has changed on remote work. And so I want to keep that in mind as we negotiate this with Caroline. But I'd look for volunteers to be on a ad hoc personnel committee so that we can.
So can I,
Yeah.
why don't we just use the personnel committee?
Yeah.
We don't have a standing one. That is an ad hoc group, but we can.
Make that a standing one.
If we are a standing one, then we have public meeting laws, so it makes the scheduling of those very challenging.
Oh, all right, well,
So
We can just ad hoc the same group if you want.
you can ad hoc the same group.
Well, I'm all for it. I
Anyone
just
else?
thought it was a standing committee.
So that,
I move that we make the standing committee the ad hoc committee and move forward with Caroline's two things that they have to deal with.
And I forget who it was because we had John needed to be away for work-related reasons. So it's, you're really pointing at him and saying he's the volunteer. Right, okay, so it was Brian, myself, Jeff, Wendy, and we used Tim for some screening, but then he wasn't really a member of the committee. Okay. Are you guys willing to form that committee?
Yeah, we can
Very good.
do a new ad hoc.
New ad hoc committee. It'll make things easier if we aren't a standing committee because we
Oh, it's fine.
gotta, you know how it is, busy
Don't
working
worry.
people. Sometimes we catch a meeting like the next day. Yeah. Okay, so Jeff, Emily, Brian, Wendy, and Carolyn will join us. Okay, very good. So we have that. I don't know if we even need a action. No. All right, so now we have this item that is thrown Dean for a loop. So Dean, when the public health emergency happened and none of us were planning on it, we had to make a resolution that allowed us to have our meetings remote. It's all these terms that we have been upholding throughout the last year and then some. So it gave us the ability to have our board meetings, our commission and council meetings by electronic means. It established some authority for the mayor and city administrator to limit staffing and public interaction. So it's all the things we did to shut down in the, effort to curb COVID. We have the ability to resume business as usual. So now that the mask mandate is gone, Jeff had asked, could we rescind this? And we can, because we aren't upholding it anymore as of now. This is our first public meeting in person as council. So we have this before us. You can read it if people would like time. Essentially, we can do away with these things that we've been doing for a year.
But we all approved it back in March.
Right.
So, I mean, Dean, I think we all approved this back.
Oh, I understand that, it's just, I did not, when you brought it, I heard you make the motion to add something. I didn't know what's in my law.
Sorry about that, yeah. And it was an oversight on my part because Jeff emailed about it a couple days ago and I meant to say sure, and I just forgot to, and so we added it this evening. So do we have a motion to rescind our resolution 2020-10?
I have one question.
Yes, please.
Let's say I can't make a meeting because of.
Very good.
I can still electronically.
Yes, and that's thanks to Caroline, who recognized that there are some benefits to Zoom. For instance, our very, very, very busy city contracted, staff, our engineer, sometimes our attorney, for them to join us by Zoom, far more feasible than for them to drive from a long distance, sit through an hour and a half long meeting for their 10 minutes. So
One reason I asked that is because I was paid, that's a law that you can do. Not the law.
All right, very good.
Not that I plan on doing.
So yeah, this was kind of a trial run tonight, but so far so good. We have an audience, they can hear us. We think they're still on. We'll find out at the end of the meeting if they heard everything. So we have this resolution before us. Do we have a motion to rescind?
I make a motion
Jeff.
to rescind.
Jeff's so excited. Brian has second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It's very good to be back in person. I was really getting tired of Zoom. And my kids were getting tired of having to duck around me on our long meetings. Okay, so we have a motion to, or we have a resolution to approve the June donations, which are generous. Before us, we have $25 to the library from Craig and Nancy Falcom. Also all of these are to the library, $25 from Eleanor Groby in memory of Dale Gibbs, $250 from Amy Schertz for the summer reading program, $2,000 from Diana and Fred Schulberg for a subscription to Ancestry.com, $100 from Greg Vandemark and Jane Wegener from the Heritage Laundromat. And for fireworks, $1,000 from Burkhart Raymer, VFW Post 4086, $250 from Wabasha Warehouse Liquors, $300 from Dick's Fresh Market, and $500 from WNB Financial, all for the fireworks. Do we have a motion to approve those? Accept them. Tim and Dean were a tie. We'll say Tim and then Dean for the second. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you for those wonderful donations. And
We do have someone on the line for the last item, but we'll still talk about that. City Wabasha capital.
Sounds good. Okay. So you want to, but you want to do that first?
Yeah,
right?
let's
Okay.
do it now. I think what we're thinking is we will have a special meeting. Do you still want it in the Wabasha Kellogg High School auditorium?
We did that in the past,
Yeah,
but we couldn't project there, right?
No.
So that's not so
Okay.
great.
all right.
So we don't need the distance anymore. This
Yeah.
might be more suitable.
Okay, all right. And then, I'm gonna try to see if Mike Flaherty can join us to talk about
The contracts.
the contract. So if there's a delay, so his picture will come up, I think, eventually. But I think, let's see if we can hear him. Mike, could you speak?
Okay, can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
We can. You can't hear us?
No, when you speak, now I can hear you. When you spoke before, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, there could be a delay, but we can hear you just fine.
Okay. Can I start the presentation? Okay. So I can't see anybody, so just interrupt me if you want me to stop speaking. Caroline asked me to give a brief presentation on the status of the Eagle Center negotiations and the documents that we're drafting. We have drafted 3 out of the 4 documents have been completed in draft form, although there's more work that needs to be done to finalize those agreements. I had a meeting with 2 Larkin Hoffman attorneys that Peter Coyle is using to draft those agreements. And we kind of set a plan to complete those on Friday. And then I spoke again with one of them today on Tuesday. So we're working on them, and they're going to get me a second draft of the 3 agreements after I made comments, and they made comments on one of them. I drafted 1, they drafted 2, but they're going to provide those by the end of the week or over the weekend. And then I'm going to, there's information I have to put in on behalf of the city and amend those again, and we'll provide those back to them a few days after they provide them to us. And then there's a couple of other outstanding issues of information gathering that needs to happen by either me or by them. And so we're working on those is the bottom line there. And then there's another agreement that I didn't explain to you last time, which was the construction funding agreement, which basically means when you do grants like this, these are construction grants, not end grants. So a construction grant means you do a little bit of work and then you pay for it out of pocket yourself, and then you seek reimbursement. And in order to, on this particular project, not on all projects, but on this particular project, the Eagle Center needs to have a bank finance that intermediate financing so that they can start the project and then seek reimbursement. And there will have to be MMB will require, because they're doing it that way, construction funding agreement, essentially, and they're sometimes called cost disbursement agreements. And I've got a number of samples from other projects, and that one is a more straightforward document that they're drafting. So that'll have to be in place, and that'll be signed by the city, the bank that the Eagle Center is using, and the Eagle Center. So those are the 4 agreements. Caroline asked me, and I can take questions if anybody has questions on any of those, but Caroline asked me to give an estimate as to the timing. And my view of it is the council should give a little bit of input on that. In terms of the timing, this needs to get done as soon as possible, but in conversations with the other attorneys, all 3 of us kind of agree that these are important documents and they have to be drafted correctly. And so we're going to do a good job. If that takes a little bit of extra time, that's what it takes. And then the process will be after we get the documents in final form, I'll draft a resolution, a city council resolution that will attach the 4 documents, or at least incorporate them into the resolution by reference. And they'll be provided to you, and then you'll be asked to adopt the resolution. And what the resolution will say is the agreements are adopted as to form, and that the mayor and clerk are allowed to sign those after they're approved by MMB and D, the 2 agencies, MMB, the funding agency, and Department of Economic Development, the sponsoring agency. So they have to do their reviews to make sure that those agreements include the necessary information. So this is, the agreements have a lot of requirements you have to meet. Similar to that SEMCRA housing agreement we did that had all those federal requirements. It's no different here. There's a lot of requirements, and there's got to be language throughout all these agreements that meet those MMB requirements. So those documents, after you approve them to form, will go be attached to a grant application and sent to MMB, and then they'll take their time to review it. And then after they're done reviewing it, they'll approve it and give us our grant. And part of that also I didn't mention is we're going to complete the grant agreement that will also be attached to the resolution. That's not something that I draft or the Eagle Center drafts. It's a standard template agreement that MMB uses, and then you use that exact language. There's just information relevant to this specific project plugged into it. So that'll be attached to in draft form, and all of these documents in draft form will go to MMB with our application. After the application is approved, the agreements will then be, the resolution that I provide to you will by its terms allow the mayor and clerk to sign them if they're in substantially similar form. If, on the other hand, MMB or DEED or any other agency requires changes to be made to one particular agreement or all the agreements, we would then have to bring them back to you to be approved again with those changes. I don't think that's going to happen here because we all are paying attention to the requirements, that me and the other lawyers are paying attention to the requirements and the checklists. But that's basically the process. So whether or not, Caroline asked me when we could get all that resolution with those attached agreements completed for your review and approval, and whether that could be done by the 23rd of June when you have a special meeting. And I told a few of the council people privately, and I'll just say it again, these are long agreements and you should read them before you adopt them or act on them. And so my view of it is you should take they should be provided to council at least a week before whatever meeting you're required to vote on them is going to occur. Now, you don't have to do that if you're okay with just getting them 3 days before, that's fine. But that's kind of my feeling, to give you a fair chance to read them and understand them and ask questions. So that would be the 16th of June, which is possible. We will try to meet that deadline, but we might not get them done by then. And so if that's the case, you'd have to have another special meeting at some point to adopt them the next week, probably, or shortly after the 23rd. So that's kind of a quick, me talking fast summary. Does anybody have questions or want any more information about it? Can't hear anybody.
Mike, can you hear me? This is Brenda Pearson.
Now I can. Yes, I couldn't hear anybody for a few minutes there.
We've lost what looks like everybody at the city. I only see a few Zoomers, but nobody at the city level.
Do you think they heard what I said, or do I have to repeat it?
You might have to hold on until they figure it out.
Oh,
Here
okay.
they come, I think. Yeah, I can see that they're having technical. There they are.
We're
You may have
here.
to repeat yourself.
No, we heard it.
Okay,
Did you hear it, or do I have to repeat everything?
no, we heard everything, yes. But do you hear us?
I do now. I was totally silent and I couldn't see I can't see the city council chambers when I was speaking there.
Okay.
It was just blank, so.
Okay, so we're just clarifying that this would be an additional agenda item on the capital financial meeting, special meeting, which we were gonna do anyway. So the thought was, since you were convening, we could add those leases as a first agenda item, get that out of the way, and then get into the workshop that we had planned.
Did I hear Mike say he was gonna try and get out the draft capital plan?
No, the draft
No.
agreements.
Draft agreements.
Well, I'm going back, first, the capital plan,
Mhm.
when do we get a look at that?
We talked about that today, and equally, if it's I guess, my plan was to try to get that out in a week in advance as well.
Like
But,
the
or
16th.
I could try to get it out sooner. I mean, it's almost ready to go. So, yeah.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
16th.
the 16th.
We should get that.
Yep.
And
And possibly the leases.
the leases.
Yeah.
And if legal can't satisfy that week, the deadline of 1 week before the meeting, we'll have to have another special meeting or,
Then my other question is, are we gonna adopt those leases and that financial plan on the 23rd, or are we going to wait until the first meeting in July?
well, we would, for the project to get started, there's a lot of contingencies. We're one of those contingencies,
You're
but we
talking
don't,
Eagle Center.
Eagle Center, yeah, but we don't want to, I'm not going to delay it. If Mike's got the documents for us on the 16th, we should see it on the 23rd.
Well, I'm thinking of the financial plan, there's gonna be public input. Are we gonna be able to revise the financial plan that night, or are we going to just adopt that in July? Not the financial, the capital improvement.
The long-term capital financial plan I had seen as a workshop with you all to
Yeah.
understand your priorities and come up with the draft.
Okay.
Then I would imagine that would need to get adopted in a future meeting. It probably wouldn't be wise to adopt it that night. Yeah, because the thought was it's an input session. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just like years past, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're only so far through expenditures of 2021, so
Yeah.
anyway. So it's our first crack at that in terms of discussing.
Seems like.
They're very unrelated. These
In the
items are,
past, we did it in August, September, sometime in that.
That's true. This isn't the budget meeting. This is just capital financial planning. So the streets, fire hall, Highway 60, what is our borrowing plan, which would be separate. Yeah, it's a line item.
Okay.
My only question about the contracts is, can we even edit them? I mean, we'll read them and review them, but can we offer suggestions or not?
Yes, absolutely. So the only one that you can't is the grant agreement. That one is set by MMB. And that's the purpose of that one is that's the document that allows you to get the money. And so all the other agreements are preliminary steps to getting the grant agreement approved. And they won't give you a grant agreement until you've got all your lease agreements in place, your use agreements, the ownership interests, anything like that.
To that effect, Tim, I would urge people to set time aside on the 16th. If the attorneys can't get us the agreements, you'll have free time. But set time aside as early as possible in that week so that you can not only, if you have questions or suggestions, you can get them to Mike so that we aren't processing everything in real time live. So there may be things he can answer that come up, especially if there's multiple members of council with the same issue. So
Yeah, so
time
Tim,
aside.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry, Mary, I didn't mean to speak over you. Zoom.
That's okay.
You can put input, you can give input on any of the other agreements and they'll have terms. Those terms, some of them are set by the state, but mostly they're not. The state has 15 or 20 checklist items that have to be in those agreements that we have to put in. And if you give input on one of those, I might have to tell, then there'll be less discretion to change it.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. So yeah, if you can look at your calendars and block time as early as possible during that week, then we'll know we can be as responsive to Mike as possible early on and maybe get our head around some of the questions that we have even before that meeting. Does that sound good, Mike?
Yep. Well, and we're not promising the 16th. I mean, this is a big project.
Yep.
And
I know, but I know how people are busy. And so if they don't block the time now, it won't suddenly materialize, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Anything further on that update?
No, I don't think so. Unless anybody has questions, no.
Thanks for joining us by Zoom. This is much more successful than I think one should expect for a complicated setup like this. So we really appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Of course. Yep.
All right. If there's nothing further, any further announcements?